Hello, Tribesters and Extended Tribe. Today, we're having another episode of Conscious Leaders, and I am so happy to be joined by Allison Akhnoukh. I actually know her as Allison Sands because we have a longer term history from university together, but we actually didn't know each other. And we've been able to actually meet living in Portugal. Who knew that would happen? But I've had the pleasure of getting to know Allison on a personal level this past year, and I thought she'd be such a good guest for me to chat to. She has a background in educational management and has also worked with a number of startups. She also, though, suffered burnout like me, and so we'll definitely touch on some of that. She has now retrained and is an executive coach, went through the Coactive Coaching Federation, probably not saying that correctly, but Coactive Coaching Institute. So we're going to have a lot to talk about. She's also a mother of 3. So there's so many ways this conversation will go. And as you all know from other episodes, we like to make this more of an in conversation with rather than a straight on interview. So let's see. Allison, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Gret.
My pleasure. Okay, let's start with you. Give us some background because you've got a very interesting career path, and we'd love to know how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so as you shared, we went to college together, and then I headed straight to Wall Street, as most good kids in the late 90s did, coming out of university, certain universities, and realized very quickly that was not where I wanted to spend my life. It was not where my purpose was. And so I spent the next bulk of my career, 15 or so years, in education management. I was in large urban school districts. I worked with a lot of charter school management organizations, helping them to scale and grow, and worked with a lot of the CEOs of those organizations, with which we can touch on kind of, some of the coaching I did with them. And then ended up on the front lines myself. I had this amazing, my dream job was handed to me to be the CEO of a brand new education management organization that was going to be opening loads of schools in the Bay Area serving underserved kids. And that was where things kind of took a twist and turn. So I don't know if you want me to go there, or I can keep telling you the stops along the way, but that's where I was on this sort of rocket ship. I went to all these fancy schools and had all this training, and then it just kind of crashed a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting how you say you got to your dream job, because it was the same with me. It's like something you strive for, you sort of put on that pedestal of, if I get that, then I'm going to feel really fulfilled. But sometimes that's not actually the reality. Let's get back into that in a bit, but just talk us through the rest of your career path and how you've ended up where you are now.
Yeah. So after that, I kind of took a shift and started to do, as I would say, moved from the front lines, kind of in the battlefield, and kind of took a step back. And I spent a number of years doing my own consulting work. So I would work, again, still in the education management space, charter schools, for people in the US will be familiar with, helping leaders with their strategic plans and kind of coaching them through their management challenges. I then took a stab at my own startup. I believed I had the answer for what needed to change in education. So I took a stab at that. It was a colossal failure, which I always wear as a badge of honor, because I think, we've learned from our failures. And it was a great experience, but it didn't work out. And then I ended up most recently, before our family moved to Portugal, I actually worked for a healthcare startup. So I had sort of micro burnout in my own personal journey. And then I just had an industry burnout. I don't know if that's something you see, Gret, but it was just like education management, it's particularly in the US, is just a hard industry. So I was like, I got to get out. I took a try at a healthcare startup, which I loved. The pace was very sustainable. I loved that job. Would have stayed there, but our family decided to move to Portugal, which was always been a priority for us, to do some international living with our kids. And so that gave me kind of a chance to just take a step back and really think about what were my gifts, what did I love doing, what filled me up on a daily basis professionally. And I realized I had done all this coaching along the way, and I just loved it. So I decided, as you said, to get my certification through Coactive. Happy to share more about that journey. It was fabulous. And now that's what I do. I work with leaders who are high performers. So I really work with a lot of high performing leaders who are generally at a place of rapid growth or change. And they're looking for kind of a thought partner, a safe space. We can talk about coaching more, but yeah, that's my day job now. And I also am just blessed to live in beautiful Portugal. And I have three kids who I'm also with.
I mean, there are definitely so many things that we can take from that short introduction on you. And I really appreciate your honesty, because that's in my experience, that's actually what people need to hear, that people, they need to hear that other people have gone through burnout. They need to hear that other people fail. Like, it doesn't always go exactly as we think it's going to, but we can learn from that. Yeah. So just touching on the burnout, let's talk a little bit about your experience with burnout and what it actually felt like for you, what your signs were, just like digging into it a little bit more, because a lot of people that we speak with, they don't necessarily know that they're going through burnout, and they're trying to understand what's happening. So if you can explain your experience, that would be really useful.
Yeah. And I think a lot of my journey with burnout was in alignment with having my children. And so I think that's probably a common thing that women often feel. So I think that's also important to normalize that, right? Like, so I had the first like inkling of burnout when after my my first son had been born, and he was only 3 months old. I know a lot of your audience is in the UK, and so this may seem like, I don't know, labor abuse, but in the US, it's pretty normal that like on month 3, if you're lucky on month 3, you're back in the office. And not only was I back in the office, but my first week back, I lived in San Francisco, and I had to go to a meeting in New York. And so I was just figuring out how to breastfeed. And I was like on this plane across the country, and my pump broke. I couldn't figure out how to pump. And I was on a 6-hour flight across the country, just left my 3-month-old baby. And that's when I kind of had this inkling of like, is this where I want to be? Is this how, but I definitely sort of stuffed it down, because I was like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be. I've read all the books. I know that it's hard, but you got to push through. So that was, but that was kind of the first little warning sign for me. And then I think how I listened to it was, I thought, okay, big organizations that have a certain culture, a pace of work, that's not where I want to be. So the way I took in that story, or that sign, was, okay, then quit the big place and go do your own thing, which is what I did. I quit the big organization I was working for. And then, as I shared, I was handed my dream job. A board of directors hired me to be their CEO to grow. And I thought, this is great. I'll be in control. I get to manage everything, because it's a startup. It's my thing. Well, it turns out that's not always the case, right? As you know, startups are their own
beast.
Exactly. Right. In many ways, there's such beauty because you are in control, but you're like drinking from the fire hose. So I still remember, this is a very vivid, tell me if I'm talking too long about this, but very vivid, like the vivid moment when I just, so I had this huge proposal due, basically to permission to open our first school. And I had to turn something around over a weekend. My mom had flown across the country to come visit. This is now my second child had been born. So I had 2 young kids. I didn't get to see her all weekend. She was there. I could, I didn't see my kids. And I was basically working on this proposal all weekend. And on Monday morning, like, I had to do a conference call. I like threw my baby at my mom, take the crying baby. I got to be on the phone. And I started to get this massive migraine. And I have always had a bit of headaches, but not to that extent. And it was like in that moment. And I'm just a huge believer. I've become such a believer in how the body talks and the body tells us what's going on. And it was like debilitating. Like I was, I was out for a couple of days. And that's kind of what just gave me this sign that like, that's not what I wanted to do. But it was hard, like I had my dream job had been handed to me. And so to kind of unravel myself from that, I snuck out the back door. Maybe this is like a failure for how you should leave, leave during burnouts. But my husband's company was based in Boulder, Colorado, and we were living in the Bay Area at the time, and we sort of decided to move to Colorado. So I instead of owning my burnout, and this is something I wish I had done, instead of owning it and sort of modeling like this isn't going to work for me, I moved with my spouse to Colorado, which was how I kind of went out the back door. Yeah. So that's my burnout story.
So many things actually resonated with me because one, I had such a similar experience as you with that, like, I had my family coming over, my sister actually, who coming over to visit for Thanksgiving. And our CEO was in town, and he was in town from the US, so Thanksgiving should have been important. But literally every day from the Wednesday right before Thanksgiving, Thursday, Friday, he was making us update presentations for a meeting that we had to go to in Paris on the Monday. So literally, I remember my heart palpitating for like 5 days straight, feeling like I was on edge the whole time. I couldn't relax. I actually couldn't really enjoy the time with my family because I was so concerned about what he was going to think. Was the work that we were doing okay? That's not a nice feeling. I'm interested. Did you actually know at that stage, was the migraine that sign like, I'm definitely burnt out, or just, this isn't what I really want it to be?
I mean, it was definitely, it was a sign on that particular opportunity. I'm not sure whether it was a message that I should permanently downshift.
Yeah.
And that's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I don't know what you think about with this, being also a mom of young kids, is like the pace of your career doesn't have to always be on one. It doesn't have to be like always rapid or always like much more mellow. There can be phases
peaks and troughs. Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because I think you and I probably come from a very similar background. It's like, we went to a very good university, and most of the people that we work with, everyone's sort of like going for their next career move and looking like they're succeeding and getting ahead. That you almost take that on board. And maybe that's our personalities, that we just take instead of actually saying, keeping things in balance. And it takes time to actually understand and listen to yourself. What's right for you, Allison, is not necessarily what's right for me. It's not necessarily what's right for the other person. We have to learn to listen to the signs. I actually didn't know I was in burnout until now that I've done the research about it. Okay. Yeah. I just knew something wasn't right. Like all of a sudden, 2 years in, I was like, I'm not a grumpy person. I'm like a half glass full, half glass full, not half glass empty. Right. I was really, really looking at everything negatively. I was really gossipy. And then 2 years in, I realized, I was like, why do I have this weird thing going on? And I had an immune issue. And it was that wake up sign, like you getting a migraine, your body tells you when it's had enough. And that's when I knew something was wrong. But I was like, me, burnout? No, I'm definitely not burnt out because of the stigma. And that's why I think it's really important that we talk about these things, because in talking and sharing the stories, and people understand, like, these are not the normal things. We don't have to put up with it, but it's not necessarily the business's fault. I kept saying yes to things that I probably should have said no to. Right. And there's parts of it that feel good, right? You're getting the validation. And then there's also the culture, which I think is shifting around, like, the badge of honor of how few hours you're sleeping. And, you're like I have the image of the frog in the hot, the boiling, like the water's getting turned up and you don't know that it's happening. Yeah. Yeah, you just go on and on and on, and it's okay. But that is the thing with the exhaustion funnel and burnout, that it's sort of this slow spiral down, and then it's not like a catalyst. It's not like oh my God, something really big happened, because it just trickles down. Yeah, and I don't think I knew about your autoimmune. I mean, for me, I've become just a huge believer. I really have had chronic migraines, and I'm a huge believer in the mind-body connection. Like it's true. And so that's often, right, the sign for us is our physical bodies. Yeah, there's a really good book called The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah, I love that one. Which, if anyone hasn't read that yet, it's definitely worth it, because it talks about the mind-body connection. It talks about the body keeping trauma inside and having it rooted down. We actually have had the chance to do yoga together. You've come to some of my
Mhm.
classes. So for
Yeah.
me, yoga is such an amazing practice because it really is that I'm embodying my mind-body connection,
Totally.
and it really helped me through my burnout. So I'd love to know from you how, aside from just, transitioning to Boulder, what did you do to get through that period?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of sort of ripping off the Band-Aid of, jumping off the ship that I was on. But I think it was also, but then it was kind of, that's destabilizing, right? Because you're off the ship and you don't know where you want to go next. So like I tried on being a stay-at-home mom for a bit, and I realized that was more, as I was burning out of that pretty fast for me personally. For other people, it's what they want and need.
Yep.
And so I think that was the tricky part, was finding out how fast did I want to push. And there were points in the next, let's see, how long ago was that? That was 10 years ago. So in the last 10 years, I've had pushes and pullbacks. And I think truthfully, I'm still figuring out how fast I want to go. And I think that can be different chapters. Like I still believe I can have a big, fast-paced chapter in my career in the future. It's not what I want right now, given the ages of my kids and things like that.
Yeah. And actually that's the thing I'm learning too. And I think that's a good point that you bring up. And it sort of goes back to that. There can be there can be peaks and troughs. Yeah. And it's just a matter of you being in tune with your own body, your own mind, to understand what direction you need to take.
Yeah.
You talked a bit about purpose, and I'd love for you to touch on that a little bit more, because I know you also work with businesses of purpose, and and purpose is something that I think is really connected to well-being. So I'd love your views on that.
Yeah, I love purpose. Actually, I'm reading a book. Where is it? It's called Deep Purpose. I'll send you the link or the book. I really love it because it is about the power of purpose inside corporations. And I think that it galvanizes, it brings people together, it creates the foundation of culture, and I think it motivates. I mean, I'll say maybe this isn't the answer you were fishing for, but one thing I think can be a challenge with purpose, which I've seen in the nonprofit sector, is when you are so purpose driven, you ignore burnout at all turns, because you've got this mission that's bigger than yourself. You're trying to, the industry I worked in, we were trying to really eradicate poverty in the US through, equality of educational opportunities. So if you feel burnt out and you've got that strong of a purpose, sometimes it's hard to see the signs.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. We're going to go off track here a little bit, but I'd love to know your thoughts on how to actually manage that, or what if you were in your role as CEO of that dream job doing, in a purpose-driven company now, with your knowledge, what would you do as a leader to help maintain a bit of balance for your people?
Right. I mean, it's the same strategies that work elsewhere, but I think it's the awareness that your people are maybe going to push themselves harder because they're not just there for the paycheck. So, I worked with a lot of the CEOs of these charter school organizations around just that. And so it's around sustainable staffing models, making sure you have enough people on the right seats on the bus, so that one person isn't holding the weight of the world on their shoulders. Just having all the practices, like the insurance of well-being, in little things like we don't email on the weekends, kind of weaving those things into your culture. But you're right, it can be even more so if you don't have, if you've got that strong of a purpose. But I think purpose is beautiful, and it really is essential to making sure that you're doing the work that you are meant to be doing.
And what's your purpose?
It's interesting. I feel like that's shifted over time, because I was so narrowly focused on this one industry. And I think for me, of education, and for me, it's really shifted to catalyzing change in the world. But I see that much broader, and I see such an array of organizations and individuals through which that can happen. I also love that mine is catalyzed because for me personally, it's not my purpose to be on the front lines. I've learned that. I've learned about my own just limitations. I'm not someone who can, I don't want to be someone who can work 80 hours a week. And so, I don't know your perspectives on whether we need those people in the world or not, or whether everyone should, have really a much sort of calmer, being. But for me, I catalyze. So I help leaders achieve their full potential. I don't need to be in the fire necessarily.
Yeah, that's I can completely understand. Do I think we need, I've never actually thought about it, but actually you just think, well, we can't all be the same actually at the end of the day. So I think some people do thrive on the go, 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 and they maybe can sustain it a little bit better. I definitely couldn't, but that also could be because I was not in the right career, in the right industry to actually be able to sustain what I was doing.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's actually quite tricky because I'm, doing something that I love. It's a startup. So I'm almost on more than I was. And I have to remind myself of the boundaries and remind myself that I am in this for the long haul. I want to create something that is sustainable. So to follow what I preach, to practice what I preach.
I mean, I feel like mindfulness, which I know is a big part of what you teach and promote, it can be a real superpower here, because if you're just, if you have awareness and you're checking in with yourself, like, is this fulfilling me? Am I in a sprint that is like lighting me up and I feel physically healthy? Then keep at it. But you need to have that like awareness of whether that's where you are or not.
I'd love to know your thoughts on the definition of good leadership and what good leadership really looks like.
I mean, I think there's, sort of the standard things that everyone kind of thinks about, sort of vision, kind of a long-term view, and, the ability to galvanize people behind a purpose, a common purpose, strategic thinking, of course. As I've worked with lots of leaders over the years, I feel like the secret sauce I've seen is the like steadfast commitment to talent and focusing on your talent development, talent retention. If you need to move people out, how to do that compassionately, but with quickly, because you got to have an organization that's filled with great people and people who want to be there. And so, some of the best leaders I've worked with, they're always thinking about succession planning for their for their team. They know all their team members intimately. They know their personal lives. They're thinking about what's going to, help them progress in their career. So it takes a lot of work, and I also, the other thing for me is humility. That's just my own one of my big values. I really value humility. And I think leaders who are humble are curious. And so they're like always looking for different answers, which help them get to the best place possible.
Yeah. Now let's turn to executive coaching and your style of coaching. I've heard a lot recently about coactive training. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And then also let's dig into how coaching can really support leaders.
Yeah, I loved coactive. I went through a year-long program with them, and it was just, so I've done a ton of coaching in my career, or anyways, what I would label as coaching. And there was a lot of it that was coaching. There was a lot of it that was consulting, which is you come in, people expect you to have the answer. And so for me, what I loved about the coactive is it really shifted that framework to much more, you're sitting alongside someone who has all the answers inside of them, and you're helping them to pull them out. There were parts of it that were a bit like wooey, I would say, for my natural style. And I loved that. So, and now those are tools that I use a lot in my coaching. So it's my practice, which a lot of it came through the coactive methodology, is it's about the whole person. So I do executive coaching, which is, the reason people come to me is because of their careers, their work. They want to grow something in that realm, but we're always thinking about the whole person, because, that's who we are. We don't leave our personal life at home, and vice versa. We do emotion processing. Sometimes people just, particularly senior leaders, it's lonely. They don't have anyone to to talk to. So sometimes it's just a space where they can process emotions. And, I do a lot of pushing, it's inquiry based, but I'm not afraid to share if I'll name something that I see. And I think that's often leaders like that too. Nobody's like telling them like it is, so if I see something, I'm not afraid to call that out.
And so when you're working with your clients, is it conversation based? Are you having them do activities or any homework or anything? I would love to know a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, I mean, all coaches have their own style and their own toolkit. I personally don't do a lot of those like assessments, like there's like the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs or DISC or all those things. A lot of coaches use them. I don't. I sometimes feel like they put us into boxes that are not as, like I was like an ENTJ on the Myers-Briggs, which is like, the like profile you're supposed to like go conquer the world. And I think then I wore that, like I should go conquer the world. And that kind of didn't work out for me. So anyways, I think sometimes those can put you in a box. So it's mostly conversational. We always have goals. So there's always a goal that they're pushing towards. I do give a lot of homework, but it's homework that's experiential to what so let's say someone's trying to work on their executive presence and they've got a meeting coming up. So it's like, how are you going to show up in this meeting? How do you want to show up? Will you email me after it happened? So I'm an accountability partner, but it's not like, going to write an essay or something.
I want to go back to your point on emotions, because I think in the past, emotions were not really allowed at work.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on emotions in the workplace, and especially with leaders themselves having emotions and how they can maybe even use that to their advantage in the workplace.
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh. When you said that, I have this like memory we probably all do of like hiding in a, bathroom stall crying right after a meeting that didn't go well.
You're like, no one cries in football.
Right,
No one cries in baseball.
Yes, get back out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I mean, we're all human and, we have to show that. And I think leaders can really model it. I think sometimes it's nice to have a safe, private space to process, so that you're not maybe, for instance, bringing a rage as a manager into a space that it shouldn't be. But like those emotions are real, so you need to let them out. Otherwise, it's gonna, you're gonna explode. If not in the workplace, then somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's such a good point. To be able to process it in the same way. I guess just thinking about vulnerability too. Mm-hmm. Do you talk with your clients about vulnerability?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
I guess, and to that point, just like, what are some of the other common themes that you're seeing with the people that you work with?
Yes, vulnerability for sure. Yeah, we do definitely touch on that. And particularly, I think, again, some of the more senior leaders, sort of how they can model that for their team in a way that keeps them in having the leadership presence that they want to have. Let's see, some of the themes, a lot of inner critic, sort of imposter syndrome. I see this, not to stereotype, but I see it more from my women clients than my men clients. I sometimes wish the men had a bit more imposter syndrome, but then when you dig under, it's there. They're just not as communicative about it, even with me as their coach. We do, I have, some clients who are a bit earlier in their career who are thinking about, the pace. So I see a lot of my earlier career clients who are just like trying to move so fast. And sometimes I try to help them think about the long view, like where do they want to be? We'll do some work around what, you're 30 years in the future. What do you want? Where do you want to be? And how to backwards map that, because it doesn't always need to be a rapid sprint.
Yeah. And you can't be on all the time. This is something I actually am bringing into what we do is like, there's a reason athletes have periods of rest and recovery. Right. And so I really like to think about career and just the day-to-day, even the day-to-day, week to week, month to month, having those periods of rest so you can recharge and then come back fresh. Yeah. Whether it's just switching off for the, when you get home from work to then be able to get back on in the morning and having a period to shut down, to recharge.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more.
So you were saying you work with lots of high achievers. Do you have any, I guess, any stories around burnout and things that you're seeing with them specifically? Obviously no names, but just to help some people put some things in perspective would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one client who's quite senior in her organization's publicly traded company, and she's leaving. She just, and she's going, and so when I see something like that, I mean, she's a rock star, and I'm helping her navigate kind of her transition there, and she's going somewhere else where she feels like she's going to be better taken care of. I think she's senior enough and sort of seasoned enough that she knows what it feels like, and she's leaning into kind of taking ownership of that and saying, this isn't okay. And I know I can be a very senior leader in a different organization that's going to take care of me. So that's the other thing, right? It's not just like some charity work to have well-being in the workforce. You retain great talent. Or the reverse is you lose great talent if you don't have those practices.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that the quality leaders are the ones that do look after their people. And it's about talent. And actually, for your talent to feel good and to be well and to be able to do what they need to do, they need to feel looked after.
Yeah.
And so for us, it all ties together. Well-being is essentially that state of feeling good. It's not about offering a yoga class or, having fruit on the desk or something. It's really a culture of well-being, and that starts with the leader, in my opinion. My opinion. Just going a bit more into well-being itself. What do you do for your well-being?
What do I do? I sleep. I sleep a lot. Sleep is like my superpower. I used to be so ashamed. Like I was ashamed of how much sleep I needed, or I would try to fight it. But like, honestly, if I get 9 hours, that's like not too much for me. That's like amazing sleep. I don't always get 9 hours, but I need 8. And so I prioritize that. I recently, I take a very 80-20 or maybe 70-30 approach to my diet. However, I just cut out caffeine, and like my sleep is so much better. So that's a priority for me. And so I'm going to keep without the caffeine.
Were you having a lot of coffee, or were you having it in the afternoon? Is that what
I think I was having it a bit too late in the day, and I didn't used to drink caffeine, and somehow I got in a routine. Everyone drinks coffee here in Portugal. So I was like, and then it was up to 3-4 cups a day. And then I cut it out, and I don't even miss it. So there's things, you notice like, okay, what am I willing to sacrifice? I exercise a lot. I love exercise, really is important to me, but also I was living in Boulder, Colorado, where it's like the exercise capital of the world. And I would feel guilty that I wasn't, doing that 7 days a week, biking 3 hours a day. So I found what I need, which is like 3 to 4 times a week. I do have a little bit of a morning routine. I don't get to it every morning, but it involves journaling and meditation. And just a lot of space. I need a lot of space and solitude. So I think it's taken me like 45 years to figure out what my formula is. And I feel like everyone's is different.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all of those points, actually, because sleep is one of the things that most people don't actually realize is foundational. I definitely didn't. I used to think 5 hours a night was fine. And just like, I don't know, it's another one of those badges of honor. I only need 5 hours. I can get up and I can, do my exercise. I can then get to the office, and then I can go out for a late night with clients, and then I only need 5 hours sleep. But that definitely is something that most people, all of us, need sleep to actually have a healthy immune system and make smart decisions. And then the balance is really good. And the other thing that resonates is like, it takes time to understand what you need, and that might shift over time. So my morning routines have actually evolved. And I'm okay with that. Like, that's good, because I'm different now than I was 3 years ago. And so I've adapted it a little bit.
Right. There's like rigidity. Like I used to have this rigidity. If I didn't get up to meditate, I was a failure, and then I wouldn't do it at all. So it's like, how to find that balance.
Yeah. You've been so honest. So thank you so much for all of your openness and honesty, because it's what, it's the thing that's going to help everyone through, and realize that, we all have different thoughts. We all have a little bit of imposter syndrome. We all have a little bit of story in our head that maybe we're not good enough or should do something a little bit better.
Totally.
If people wanted to find you, which I'm sure they're going to after this conversation, how can they reach out to you? How can they get more information on you?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of social media. I mean, I'm on like all the platforms personally, but the best way is honestly my website, which is just AllisonAkhnoukh.com. It's a hard last name to spell. I'm also on LinkedIn. So I don't know if I don't know where you share this, but people could click through to me there.
Yep, it will be on LinkedIn, but we'll also put everything, I'll put all the details in so people can click through and get to your website.
Yeah.
But your website is the best place to find you.
think so,
Or just come to Portugal.
Just come to Portugal. Exactly. I do. Most of my clients right now are in the US, actually West Coast of the US. And so we meet over Zoom, but I always think, yeah, that'd be fun to have in person. So come to Portugal. And I just want to say, Gret, I love so much what you're up to, because I feel like there's like, macro doses and micro doses of every sort of, tool or medicine, whatever. And like, I love how people can access all of your content kind of on demand and when they need it. Sometimes people need like a big coaching engagement, but so I feel like there's a lot of compliments to what we're doing.
There is a lot, and thank you for that. And just like you say, it sort of evolves. We're sort of doing a little bit of an evolution right now that hopefully will make it easier for our actual members to work through the content. Great. And identify what stage they're at, so they know exactly where to focus.
Oh, perfect.
But yeah, so thank you for that. It's always nice to get some compliments, take it on board. Sometimes me too, I'm my own worst critic sometimes. Like, I'm not doing enough. Totally. But it all takes time. Allison, this has been such a nice conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and you've had so much wisdom and also honesty about your own experience, which I know that our audience will definitely appreciate. So thank you very much.
Fabulous. It was my pleasure. So much fun. Next time on the yoga mat.
Yes, exactly. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and staying till the end. And we will make sure to include all of the notes on Allison, how you can reach out to her, in the show notes. And until the next episode, be here and be well. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next episode. And by the way, if you like what you heard, then hit subscribe to receive all the future episodes. Better yet, if you're feeling inspired by what you just heard, then leave a review letting me know who else you might want to hear from on Conscious Leaders. To learn more about the show, about conscious working, or Tribe, our membership, head over to our website, consciousworking.co. Yes, it's just CO, so consciousworking.co. And for those of you that might be suffering burnout, we have a great free resource, the Beat Burnout Guide. It's a really simple assessment with tools for you to take action now. Check it out in the show notes so that you can access it immediately. See you in the next episode. Be here and be well.